Hi, my name is Katherine, and I am the San Francisco Regional Manager at Help One Child. At Help One Child, our mission is to strengthen families, and we focus on families who have been impacted by foster care and adoption. So this is me and my family. Um, so growing up, I've always had a heart for the homeless, and I just wasn't exactly sure how to get involved and how to make an impact. When I was in college, I would go weekly to Skid Row with my church. We would hand out food and clothing. Um, and one of our leaders told me one time, we show up every Friday. We give out these resources, but this is not what's actually going to change lives. What is going to change lives are relationships, living life with people. And so after I graduated, I got an internship at a youth shelter here in San Francisco, serving ages 18 to 24. And that's where foster care was um, introduced to me for the first time. I saw firsthand the very negative and hurtful impacts that a child can experience when they go through and spend their childhood in the foster care system. And so after about 5 years working at the shelter, I started again to get a little frustrated of to seeing the same youth come in every single year. And I felt like this wasn't enough. And so I was wrestling with this idea of what is a solution to our homeless crisis in San Francisco? And that's where foster care um, was placed in my heart. So, a trend that we were seeing is so many of our youth experienced very, very difficult childhoods, a lot of brokenness as they were growing up. And that was kind of my light bulb moment. Um, if we can go upstream, if we can support a few children at a time, right? And not just these children, but embracing their biological families, what a difference we could make 10, 15 years down the road, right? If more and more families were opening up their homes and taking this approach to prevent kids from ending up in the streets, prevent kids from spending a lifetime in foster care. And so my family and I, we were licensed in 2018, and we have since cared for 4 little ones. We adopted our daughter, the middle heart, please. We adopted our daughter in 2020, and we're currently caring for a 9-month-old. It is our goal, every single placement, as long as it is safe and possible and the birth family is open to it, to engage with them and to build a relationship. And it has been hands down the most beautiful and rewarding part of our foster care journey. I still get um, text updates from grandparents, and I keep a journal with our current placement's birth families, and they'll write back, and we exchange pictures and whatnot. Um, sorry. A friend of mine told me that started talking to me about Help One Child and said, "You really need to talk to Valerie. I feel like you guys are on the same page." And when we met, it was one of those conversations where you just are like instantly bonded, right? We were using the same language, we understood one another, we had this passion to see children cared for and cared for well in the Bay Area. And we both understood that foster care doesn't begin and end with the children, but it's the whole spectrum: prevention, right? Caring for their parents and the relatives who are stepping in, supporting youth as they're exiting the foster care system, celebrating and walking with parents who are adopting and also going to be putting in the hard work to help their kids overcome trauma for the rest of their lives. And so, how do we do this well? So, after that initial conversation, I was completely sold, and I joined the staff in 2021. Um, and so, today we really want to highlight foster care and its relationship with the unhoused population, specifically in San Francisco. If you go to the California Child Welfare Indicators Project, you will find all kinds of data around the child welfare system, allegations, how long kids are in care, where kids are placed, et cetera, et cetera. But for today, we wanted to highlight just a few of those data points. As of April 2024, there are 601 youth in care and 155 18 to 24-year-olds who are known as non-minor dependents. So when a child is exiting foster care at the age of 18, but they still want to utilize services or they still need to utilize services, there is a category called non-minor dependents, which is with the goal of transitioning them to independent living. The next goal, oh, this is not good. That should be 77, not 81. So 77% of youth in foster care were removed due to neglect. And this is very significant. Children enter care due to severe neglect, chronic abuse, or when they are in imminent danger. And for the 77% of youth in San Francisco to be removed for neglect paints a very, very vivid picture. It is important that we note that neglect is different than abuse. The state of California defines general neglect as the negligent failure of a parent or guardian or caretaker to provide adequate food, clothing, shelter, or supervision where no physical injury to a child has occurred. Severe neglect refers to those situations of neglect where a child's health is endangered, including severe malnutrition. And the reason why this data point is so significant is because neglect is often connected with poverty. Oftentimes, parents are working multiple jobs. Perhaps they're single parents. Childcare is expensive. They don't have a strong support network. It's not because they don't love their children. I have a large foster family network, and every single one of these parents can tell you that the kids that they're caring for, their birth families, they love their children, regardless of why they were removed. Poverty is a complex and ongoing issue, and it is crucial that we recognize its role in the foster care system. Families who are experiencing material hardships are often are more likely to be reported by Child Protective Services than families who do not have these same hardships, because oftentimes there are more eyes on them. They're utilizing more services. They are having to reach out for different things. And the last statistic that we wanted to highlight is that 31% of the youth in foster care are in county. That means 69% of kids in care are out of county. LA County, Fresno County, Sacramento. These are very, very far distances that these kids are being placed. So not only have they been removed from their family, which regardless of the reason is traumatic in itself, they are now removed from their community and placed in a new home. Some of this can absolutely be because they're placed with a relative who doesn't live in San Francisco. That is absolutely part of the statistic. But the truth of the matter is that there are just not enough foster families in San Francisco to care for these kids and to keep them in their schools, to keep them in the neighborhoods that they are familiar with. In 2022, there was a homeless youth point-in-time count. They did another one in 2024, but that report is currently being written right now. So in 2022, there were 1,073 unaccompanied homeless children and transitional aged youth in San Francisco. And its estimates are that 1 in 4 youth in foster care will experience homelessness within 4 years. 29% of these youth reported that they had a history in foster care. A lot of the recommendations and resources supporting these youth are really encouraging them to reconnect with their family. Sorry, there's another. We did make some edits this morning, and that did not save, apparently. But 40% of youth reported having a supportive adult in the Bay Area, not 16. And that is it to tie that back to those in foster care, right? There are a lot of services for kids in care. When someone exits and they turn 18 and they become a non-minor dependent, it ends at 21, right? We have programs for them to provide housing and behavioral health, education and employment supports. But when this young person turns 21, it ends. So these stable adults who have been there and supporting them as they're transitioning into adulthood, all of a sudden are no longer available to them. And so my point today is to really show that foster care plays a huge role in our homeless crisis. And at Help One Child, we are committed to supporting families in order to strengthen them and to keep the family unit intact. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Valerie, our executive director.
Thank you. I'll just elaborate on these two things and then I'll kind of kick off. Can I still up? So it's actually 60% of youth reported not having a supportive adult in the Bay Area. And that's just like, for me, that sounds huge. Like, you remember when you think back to who you were at 18 to 21, like, man, if you were anything like me, I was still going home and like stealing the cereal and the toilet paper, like, not to mention just needing to actually have a sounding wall, right? Somebody to, hold me accountable for things or just guide me. So that's significant. And then I think, to Kat's point, that those TASE services coming to an end, that leaves a gap. And even a gap in resources, like those physical resources needed. And we're going to circle back to the end, so that's sort of a cliffhanger. But so I'm Valerie. I have the privilege of leading Help One Child as the executive director. I joined the organization as a volunteer in 2012, and it was a moment where I was ready to like make the leap into the foster care world, and my husband was like, "Let's pump the brakes for a second." And so we did that for 3 years, and then 2015 we became foster parents. We welcomed 6 kiddos into our home, and that 6th one was my unicorn. She was my Christmas present one year, and she's was our first forever baby. We've added a couple more. So our foster journey has looked a little bit different than it did in those days, but it's such a gift to be able to still provide a safe space for a kid as long as they need it. And so anyway, that's my family. So back to Help One Child's mission, I was tasked this morning to sort of unpack a little bit more of who Help One Child is around the Bay Area. We were founded in 1993, so we've been around for over 30 years. And I will say over those 30 years, like our core mission of strengthening families has not shifted. But our programs for sure have undergone some refinement, and I'm excited to sort of elaborate on that a little bit and talk to you about what that looks like. I think the interesting thing with all of this is systems are broken, and the foster care system is no different. And yet, like we need to fill these holes, right, or these gaps, or provide some sort of services. And so, I think one of the things that is our driving force, the second part of this statement, to impact their long-term health and stability. I would imagine that if I was to just ask you, How impactful do you think a disruption in your main caregiver would have been while you were a child? Like everybody would agree that that would be impactful. And yet there's not a ton of services for the caregiver. And so we've sort of narrowed our window to the bulk of our services are actually in support of that caregiver, that adoptive mom or dad or the foster parent. We do serve the full breadth of child welfare services. So we serve biological families, we prevention, reunification, and those that are exiting the foster care system. But you'll see in a second here that really our drive is to try to impact that long-term health and stability. There's a little bit of research here, and I apologize for all the words on the screen in front of you. But let me just kind of highlight what is important. 40% of kids in foster care have 3 or more placements. I mean, that's like frightening. Placement instability also impacts a child's chances for permanency through reunification, adoption, or guardianship. The goal for foster care really is to see families reunited. At this point, there's a lot of money being put forward and energy by child welfare services to prevent children from entering care. There's an acknowledgement that kids entering care should be only done when absolutely necessary, which is beautiful and good, because if we can get ahead of that trauma of being removed, like Kat said, to different counties or different communities or different even just lifestyles, right? That's important. But here's what I think we don't always talk about, but we're very aware of at Help One Child. 1/3 of children in foster care reunite with their parents after the first placement. So those kids who have had one placement, 30%, or I'm sorry, yeah, 33%, 1/3. That goes down to 13% if they've had 2 placements. And from there, 5% reunite after the 3rd placement. That drops quickly, right? And so if reunification is our goal, we got to do everything we can to make that first placement the best placement. And sometimes that means educating and equipping those caregivers to continue to say yes. I'm going to introduce you to a family that we serve. These are the Goodmans. The Goodmans raised a couple of kiddos that turned out all right. And when they got to college, I would argue that maybe they were bored. I'm not quite sure. But one Sunday, they were sitting in their parish, and they heard an appeal from Help One Child to that the county was looking for foster parents, that there were kids that were needing families and homes, even for just a season. And because they had raised kids through teenage years, they weren't frightened by that. And they said, we can do that. And so they filled their home over the next decade with whomever needed a place. And one of those ladies left a lasting mark. Her name was Kayla, and she's here in this picture. And similar to probably many folks in your journey, things were not easy for Kayla. Right. And so as she left their home, which I believe she ran away from multiple times, I mean, just she found she made poor decisions in choosing partners in her relationship with substance abuse, and you name it. But this beautiful couple remained in her life. And so over about a decade, a little bit over, they would receive phone calls of despair and like, this is it. This is the moment that everything's going to change, right? And so they had this back and forth relationship and always provided hope and encouragement and often a couch or a bed, right? And a safe space to land while sobriety was being sought out or a relationship was being fled from or that sort of thing. But after about a decade of doing that, they finally heard from their former foster daughter, and everything was different because now it was about a small child that she was carrying. Right? And so they welcomed her. They assisted with sobriety to the point that they could. And they welcomed this sweet baby girl into their home and into their lives. And I would love to tell you that it's like all rosy and perfect. And unfortunately, it's not. Sometimes old habits are hard to shake. But what I would say, I get asked quite often, like, what is success? What is success for a child in foster care? Like, how do you define that? And I would make the argument that this is it. Having a caring adult, having a safe, stable person or family that you know you can run to in a time of crisis and need, I would say that that is success. Because if we go back to those really sobering stats about those folks on the streets that were all just brokenhearted over, they're missing that. Many of them, not all of them, but lots, right? And I think there's been so much research to understand the impact one caring adult can have. And I think it's important, and that's where I want to kind of spend a little bit of time unpacking our programs with that in mind. One caring adult. It kind of started back in the 50s. There was a research study done on some folks in the same community in Kauai. And the question became, if you're unfamiliar with that study, I apologize, but it's beautiful and it's a fascinating read. But the question became like, what was that ticker for this child to become an adult who found safety and stability and was like a functioning part of society versus this child? Because on all other aspects of their life, they were the same, right? They're the same sort of economic issues, same, they both had parents who had either deceased or were unavailable to parent them for whatever reason. So what was the difference? Where was that ticker? And it was one caring adult. Because what we learned from that person is that somebody can be trusted. And how does that change the rest of our world? If folks can be trusted, everything is different. So at Help One Child, we have 3 tiers, or 3 kind of focuses: education, connection, and resources. Again, with that like one caring adult, that caregiver in mind, that foster mom, adoptive dad, whatever that might be, if we can equip them with education, the term ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, has come up a couple of times, which just makes my heart sing. It can change everything. It can be what that caring adult needs to say yes again tomorrow and the next morning and the next morning, so that that placement is stable and it's that there's no disruption in that caregiver. Providing connection. I can speak from experience, as I'm sure Kat could. There's very little that feels more isolating than being a foster parent. There's all kinds of rules, and anyway, it's I won't bore you with it. But I remember this moment in my own journey where I had a dear friend of mine who was equating her 3-year-old's tantrum that probably lasted for 4 minutes with the 8-year-old in our care who was like, smashing through walls and breaking furniture, and it would last for days. That's not the same. Now you've made me feel incredibly isolated, and I no longer want to talk to you about what's going on in my family, right? And so providing connection opportunity for folks to hear from one another. We hosted camp a couple of weeks ago, and we had 50 kiddos coming from around the Bay Area, and they got to come and connect with one another. Unfortunately, I don't know, it's a privilege and a burden. I had to make 3 calls home that week to different parents to try to find out, like, hey, your kid's not having a super successful week. We're having some issues around safety and engaging with one another. Like, any tips, any tricks, any keywords I should use, those kind of calls. And 3 families said, man, we're like on the brink of dissolving this adoption. We're on the brink of terminating this placement. We're on the brink of saying no, that we can't keep doing this. Not exactly the call I was hoping to make. But here's what I can offer. I can offer hope. And if any of you have walked with folks who have this battle with addiction, or who have a history of like just terrible relationships, you recognize your place in it, right? You cannot will someone to leave a destructive relationship. You cannot will someone to find ultimate sobriety. You can't do much, right? Welcome to the world of fostering. You can do very little, but what you can do is show up, and you can wait, because often time is our greatest healer. Right? And research has been abundantly clear. The pains that come, the pain, the hardship, the trauma that comes from relationships are healed in relationships. That pain and that wiring in your brain to not trust adults because all you've seen demonstrated is that they're untrustworthy, that's only rewired by an adult being trustworthy again and again and again and again. And so that connection piece is vital, because if folks can come around you and say, man, yeah, we had that exact same experience about 5 years ago, and this is where we are now. So hang on, just keep saying yes. It's necessary. So that education piece is critical. Connection is equally. And then lastly, I want to talk about our resources. We run a couple of different things, but Care Portal's been mentioned, and maybe some of you know what that looks like. I'm going to skip this. This just says, yes, you should do what you should be doing. So we talked about that gap. Let's pretend we're all Tay Youth right now, and we've been working with this amazing caseworker, and they've got us all set up, and we've got housing sorted out, and we're down to like the wire. We've got a couple of weeks, and now I know where I'm gonna live, but I don't have anything to go in there. And I have this job, but it's obviously not enough to pay for anything here, because how do you furnish a home? Everything. That is where Care Portal comes in. That is one example of the ways Care Portal can step in and like support and wrap around where services are lacking, right? We can help provide that. So here's what Care Portal is. It is an online platform where a caseworker identifies an acute need. You heard that, acute, not chronic. A supervisor or the agency vets that need. And then once it's thumbs up, it goes out to a community of responders. So folks who have already signed up, you can find it right now live. Or you get it either via email, or if you have the app, you'll get notified that way. Like there's a request in your neighborhood for X, Y, and Z. And then the responder and the caseworker create a fulfillment plan. Looks a little bit different. We partner with, just to kind of give you a concept, one of our partners right here in San Francisco is Turntable. Oftentimes the population that Robin and her team are serving there, it's not appropriate for us to go and engage with, right? We're not looking for sort of the exploitation further of individuals. So sometimes you're engaging with the caseworker, sometimes you're directly wrapping around families. But Care Portal is one of the ways where we feel like we can support families, so that if there is a caseworker that's walking with them because they've identified there are some areas of need, whether it's beds, dressers, food, you name it, the community can respond and we can fill those gaps, because that's not social services game. So this is who Care Portal is. We launched it 5 years ago. We're just about to celebrate 5 years in October. So these are all San Francisco Bay numbers, but I'll just highlight this. For prevention, we've served over 1,200 kids, right? And 103 of those specifically, the social worker identified, because you met this goal, this kiddo did not enter foster care. For the 657 youth we supported while they were in the system, 154 of those were reunifying with their parents. And we love those stories. 233 were transitional age youth. And then there's a couple of numbers down here. Over $400,000 economic impact just for prevention. So it's this incredible platform. It's super simple in its concept, and it's live here in San Francisco. We're always trying to continue to recruit more community responders, more church partners, and also more agencies. So if you're sitting here thinking, oh my word, this agency that I know of, or this nonprofit, they should utilize this. They have folks who have needs. Please direct them to us. We would love that. Just in San Francisco, we launched 2 years ago, and we've served 280 kids. So half of those almost were prevention. Nearly 40% were aging out youth. So this is live and active and ways you can engage today. I think that's what I have. We tried to have some time for question and answers, so I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Let's give her a round of applause. Does anyone have any questions? Scott in the back.
Yeah, thanks so much for the time. Can you go back 2 slides? There was yeah, right there. So if we look at the resources and the Care Portal, so there's like, it seems like there's some encouraging numbers up there. I mean, obviously not where we want to be, but like 154 youth reunifying. Is that a direct result of what you do, of the Care Portal, the services, And if so, like, what did you do to sort of make that happen?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So when a social worker or a caseworker enters the request, they have to identify a purpose statement. And so they have to say, you know, like what is going to be accomplished. Oftentimes when families are reunifying, they need a bed, they need a car seat, they need a stroller, like they need something very tangible to get them to cross that line. I remember one of the kids that we had in our care, really like they needed baby gates, they needed, like the social worker has identified, this is your next hurdle. And then once that's done, they're transitioning into your care. So yeah, it can, 154, like absolutely, that there will be those kind of hurdles to jump through. A working refrigerator. I mean, it can be silly, but or seemingly silly, but it is the hurdle that is keeping those kids from reunifying.
What does the 1210 number mean? Prevention 1210 103. Did
Yeah.
you prevent one? I mean, how many kids did you prevent from entering foster care?
So through Care Portal, 103. But prevention, so we walked with, I don't want to do this kind of math, almost 1,100 kids that were still with their biological family. And they weren't necessarily at risk of being removed into foster care in that moment. Does that make sense?
So in other words, it's degrees.
It's degrees.
Path, and they were further up, so they were maybe at a 1, and you got and intervened before they got to a 4 or a 5.
Exactly.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
So it can vary. Sometimes it's groceries, it's school supplies, it's, you know, you
Yeah,
fill in.
it's-
So that's not like, oh, that was it. That's what kept them out of foster care. The 103, that can be pinpointed to this needs to happen or these kids will enter care.
Okay, so it's all okay. That's a great
that make
answer,
sense?
and I love the integrity of your numbers.
Oh.
But I mean that 1210, I know because okay, my question was more about what are the resources you do to equip foster care parents, you know, to empower and help, be there, but also not be codependent. I mean, that's really difficult. And I have a family member who adopted, and now the daughter is in her late 20s, dealing with addiction. So they've been through that whole. It wasn't foster care; it was adoption. And man, like they need so much help. It's so hard on your own. And, you know, that's an easier case compared to foster kids. And I know there's like what's the group that's like the AA group for parents? That has been incredible resource to them. But even now, with all the resources in this community, it's helped them too. But even now, with all these resources, there's still so much better we could do. So I wanted to, you know, ask about what you guys do to help the family be more equipped.
Yeah, I mean, I think first and foremost, we speak truth. Like we say things that are hard. I think that was one of the reasons Kat and I kind of clicked at the beginning is we're both foster parents. We both love and care for biological families that we've had the privilege of getting to know and interact with. And like, it's just, we came down from our white horse or our throne or whatever, right? If we stayed there for a minute, but we speak truth. So, I mean, you talked about kind of codependency. I think even, you know, I just referenced camp in some of these conversations. One of the moms that I was talking to, she's like, you know, my child's on her 7th placement. And I really thought I could be the one. And I said, well, you still can, but you have to realize that you're not providing any healing outside of just continuing to say yes. Like the rest is in her court and probably she just needs time. It's interesting the way trauma works. I mean, sometimes I had another little boy at camp who told me like, he said it in 2 different moments. One was, I can't trust anyone. And the other was, nobody loves me. Super easy things to say. Camp is a lot of fun. You guys should come and be a part of it. But anyway, I mean, those are like hardcore truths for this child. He believes, like they're intrinsic to him. He believes that he cannot trust anybody and that nobody loves him. And that's not going to be solved by saying it one time. It's not going to be solved by saying it 100 times. It's going to be solved because 20 years later, you're continuing to say it. But that parent is looking for a solution today because how much of us are like into the long suffering game? And that's where adoption actually can be sort of a greater hardship, if you will, because often the same your brain developments in different stages, and I won't pretend like I'm uber smart and want to walk you through that, but it's fascinating to learn about. And I mean, if you miss a window where you were neglected and you weren't able to learn that you have a caring adult and that, you can trust adults, man, your trajectory goes a whole different way. And then trying to convince them after you just met them a month ago or a year ago or even 3 years ago, when they have built up the like repetitions of this is not, it's hard. So what do? Education more than anything. And then I think that peer support, hearing from people who were in the trenches, were in your shoes, like totally get it, can hit you story for story, and then say, you gotta just wait. Like it takes time. Hearing all of that, speaking truth into people's lives, I think that's what we do more than anything else.
I've got a question. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Just on the numbers on the economic impact, how do you come up with that number?
Yeah, it's such a great question. So on Care Portal's website, they have a whole page dedicated to just answering that question. I'll give you like the real overview. They worked with the director of Texas Child and Family Services to establish very, very conservative numbers. So we talked about those purpose statements. A child being prevented from foster care, there's a cost of a child entering foster care, like the number of hours it requires of the social worker, the investigative team, all that stuff. That becomes $1. And so that gets triggered when that social worker enters that purpose statement. Does that make sense? Yeah.
So I know that you guys have only been up for 2 years, and it's hard to build out a network of people who can respond. How big is that network of organizations that support whenever there's a need? How does that work, and how many organizations are currently involved in that?
In San Francisco, there are currently 2 organizations that are directly in San Francisco. So we have Turntable and then Alpha Pregnancy Center. But because we are very close to San Mateo County and Contra Costa County, we do get a lot of requests from those. And then people are able to support these in those areas as well.
Organizations that support, so the other side, not like faith-based organizations or community groups that want to help. How many of those organizations do you guys have currently responding as a community?
We currently have 5 churches who are in our Care Portal network.
In the whole Bay Area?
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
San Francisco.
Yeah, I think so. Help One Child partners with. We're just putting out our annual report, so this should be like off the top of my head, but my numbers, I think it's like 93 churches last year around the Bay Area and probably 20 different organizations. Not all of those are on Care Portal utilizing it. So it's definitely, we're trying to build out that ecosystem. As you can imagine, it's a little bit tricky to get people excited to do something when there's nothing for them to do. And so having that, like, folks entering requests, having that, and then also you don't want agencies entering requests where no one is ready to respond to them. So anyway, it's like a gingerly walk, and but 2 years in, we're up, like steamrolling ahead. So it's ready for more responders and it's ready for more requesters, if that makes sense.
I just wanted to invite Anne Marie up to share a very special personal story about Care Portal, because Anne Marie is our coordinator for the Street Outreach DAO, and I'll let you share a little bit more about that. But she, you're hearing the girls talk about Robin and Turntable. So Robin Geisman came and spoke about her organization Turntable here at We Heart SF a few weeks ago, and it was it was a wonderful talk. She really left an incredible impact on the group, and Anne Marie had an experience that really bridged all of these organizations. So I just wanted you to share your personal story about using Care Portal.
Yeah, so very nice to meet you guys. Thank you for this amazing showcase of what you're doing. So I got connected to Care Portal through Reality SF. They're a church and they have a ton of very unique volunteer opportunities. So I love it as a outreach, someone who loves outreach. And I joined it, got trained in Care Portal, and specifically I wanted to donate art supplies because I have a ton of art supplies. I've been an art teacher in many different communities throughout the years. And this is something I'm very passionate about. This is what I love to share with other people. So Katherine over here created it was a WhatsApp group with all of the volunteers for Care Portal. And we kind of share with each other. And I shared what I was most interested in, finding people who want art supplies. She pinged me, said, "Oh, there's one on there. Go get it." And then I saw it, I grabbed it, claimed it, this is mine, went on Facebook Marketplace, scoured it, got a bunch of painting supplies, canvases, easels. I think there were also fabric glue requests in there. And then when I was talking to the kind of the coordinator who I was dropping the items off to, it was Robin from Turntable. And not only did I get to go tour the beautiful campus that they have in on 3rd Street, kind of in the Bayview district, but I got to meet the teen who I was giving the art supplies to. It was so beautiful. And she was so excited to meet me. And I told her every single piece of art that piece of supply that I was giving her. And I was talking with Robin, and I might even offer some art classes through Turntable at their site. So the world is very small, and we're all connected. And any little thing you can do to help each other, it's huge. It's much huger than you think. So thank you guys for offering this for us. It feels really great. Mhm.
Just a quick question. So I was going to ask before Anne Marie got up, do individuals participate in Care Portal as responders or just churches? Or...
Yeah, so you're the title is like community responder.
Oh.
So yeah, both. One of the aspects of Care Portal is, yeah, I mean, the thing with the faith community is it's a big pocket of folks, typically with compassion and looking for stuff to do. And so it can be a sort of an easy way to drive volunteerism. And that was not lost on the folks who created this, who were out of Kansas City. Thank you. Doing it.
Can you turn your mic on, Ted?
Sorry.
There you go.
Oh, I love what you're doing. This is brilliant. I love the portal. I love the tech. I love the fact that prevention is the biggest slice there. I think there's so much value there. Like you just said, you save tons of money you can save every child you prevent from going in there. I'd like to see that prevention is as big as the whole need. Okay. Are you familiar with Fostering the Bay? They're now called Fostering the City. It seems like
so familiar.
Okay. Tell me how you work with them.
We have so much love for each other. Yeah, actually, Philip Pattison, who's the founder there, we partnered with him when he was still pastoring and just sort of dreaming up Foster the Bay and now Foster the City. Their big heartstring, their like laser sharp focus is the vernacular they use, is to recruit and then wrap around those that they recruit as foster parents with a support team. So that's great. They don't use Care Portal. It's something we've talked about with them. They really want that support team to sort of wrap around each family and like provide all the things they need. So, and they're not an agency. So like they're not necessarily aware of the needs of like Tay Youth or, and so really like identifying the need, they're not great at that, right? Because they're not just, eliminate that word. So sorry. Can we retract that? They are supporting families who have stepped up to be foster parents. So like Kat and myself or whatever. Typically we have the means to kind of support our kiddos. We need people to walk with us. We need, you want to bring me lasagna, I'll totally eat it. That's not what Care Portal is, right? So Care Portal is trying to support families and kids, and specifically that are in a moment of crisis, right? And so if we can provide the groceries so that their fridge is full again, great. Does that make sense? There's a little bit of a difference there. Yeah.
So Foster the City group actually was my first contact, and they pointed me to you guys.
See, we
and
love
they
each
just
other.
said, you don't need to interview us. You need to interview them. They're changing the world. We're just getting people recruited so that we can change the world. So you guys are here because of them. So it was my contact.
Yeah, thank you so much for your talk. I just want to give you the credit that you're building something that has technical architecture behind it, because we're at the House of Web3 and we love to have the solutions that have a robust like plumbing between different organizations and partners and tracking and all of that. What's your favorite part, or like what's your favorite part and what would you want to do to see the plumbing between the care portal work even more effectively at scale? Like, give me your kind of dream for that.
Yeah. So I was asked that. So Care Portal actually hosted its own conference this past year, and I had one of their tech guys ask me. And honestly, I think they're working on it, but there's an element when Amory responded to the request. I think they're solving it now. It needs a more like, social media response where like we can all see each other's response and reply, and there can be a conversation without. Right now it's like it notifies everybody. It's just a little clunky right now, so they're trimming it up. That's the biggest issue, because I do think that collaboration is key, and we're seeing sometimes the requests are huge, right? Like that Tay youth that's moving out, they need it all. They need pots and pans, they need sheets, they need a bed, they need dishware, they need towels, right? Like the list is huge. That takes an army to respond to. And I think it's possible, and we see it. But rather than right now, it's easy for like everybody to throw money at. It's less easy for everyone to throw stuff at. Anyway, it's like it continues to get more and more streamlined. But that would be my argument right now, is like the chatter, the like comments need to be easier, just simpler.
It's a great talk, and thank you for what you're doing. But it couldn't help but remind me of the DAOs and our Ring Tree program, where they're bringing tiny homes to 20 women, but they're also bringing all sorts of resources there for them so that they can move on to the next level. And it seems to me that you've identified many problems that are common to foster care kids, right? There are addiction issues, mental health issues, distrust issues. So what I'm wondering is, for example, a mental health resource. We happen to get somebody who is in psychiatry who's now volunteering time. So is that a resource that you have found? And if not, think about how to find it. Similarly, you mentioned something that is equivalent to mentorship. You said success stories. And it struck me that while everybody's not living in the same place in San Francisco, it's a small area. So if many foster parents are having problems with the behavior of foster kids because of their traumatized backgrounds, then maybe there can be groups. I'm even thinking AA groups for the kids with mentors who've successfully come out, so that you're starting to deal with the commonality of the mental health. I'll call them mental health issues. They could be described other ways, but that's the way I'm describing them. The issues that they have to deal with, and getting the help in real time that's then going to help the parents and the kids.
Yeah, I think those are great points. So right now, our groups, so parents are meeting monthly, dads are meeting over donuts monthly, and because they need more incentive. But kids are meeting kind of quarterly. They just look like big play dates where parents can drop off. We call them parents' night out or parents' day out. Here's the only thing with kids: we have to protect them. We have to protect them from themselves and each other, and hurting people hurt people. And we know that. So mental health is a part of it. If a child is in foster care, man, the amount of resources that are available are incredible. It's really trying to identify, like, what is that biological family? What would help them? And also, like, what are they open to, right? It's respecting folks. So yes, I agree with all that you just said. And I think we're trying to do it to some degree. And also just like owning the part, the like staying in the lane we're been allowed to travel in, which is often filling that gap of like, I can get you art supplies. I have some.
Well, this has been amazing. Thank you for joining us today. Give me a hand.